Okay, so tonight we're gonna pull back the curtain on a cinematic legend. I mean, we've all seen the movies, right? But this is about the terrifying true story that started it all. This is the real story of the Borley nun.
You know, we're always told that when you're facing something evil, you should find sanctuary, right? A safe place. But what if that safe place is actually the most haunted place of all? Well, our story kicks off right there, inside Borley Church in England, a place so infamous for its hauntings, it's become a legend all on its own.
Now, to really get a handle on just how terrifying Borley is, we're not gonna start at the beginning. Nope. We're jumping straight into a moment of just peak fear. And we're doing it with the world's most famous paranormal investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren. I mean, think about it. These two had faced countless hauntings. They'd confronted demons, stared straight into the abyss. But what they found here, in the dead of night at Borley, well, it would go down as one of their most frightening cases ever. So the second they step inside, Lorraine feels it. Just boom, an immediate, powerful psychic connection to something really sinister in that church. She actually sees a shadowy figure, in a nun's habit, just watching her from the altar before it just vanishes. And she knew, like instinctively, that the nun wasn't the only one there. The spirit of a monk was trapped here too. So you'd think they'd tell the priest and he'd be skeptical, right? Or maybe offer some comfort? No way. When they told him what they saw, he didn't do either of those things. He literally fled to the prayer room, absolutely terrified. He warned them that if they were telling the truth, then an ancient evil had just been reawakened. And that priest, he's the one who starts to unravel the whole thing. He revealed that the source of this haunting, it wasn't just some simple ghost story. Oh no. It was a brutal, centuries-old history of forbidden love and absolutely horrific vengeance. Yeah, see, this haunting wasn't born from a peaceful death. It was born from a horrific, drawn-out execution. So you have this forbidden affair between a nun from a convent nearby and a monk from the monastery. When they're found out, the end is just the most brutal thing you can imagine. The monk was publicly hanged, but the nun, she was sentenced to a fate that's arguably way worse than death. She was walled up alive, inside the stones of her own convent, just left to die in the dark. And, her torturous death didn't bring any kind of peace. Not at all. It unleashed a curse. The very people who condemned her started dying off, one by one, under really mysterious circumstances. And it's like the land itself was just forever tainted by this act of cruelty, because the original rectory on the property, it mysteriously burned right to the ground. But the story doesn't even come close to ending there. When a new rectory was built on the ashes of the old one, that's when the real haunting began. So the first family to move in, the Bull family, they had 14 children, and they would have to endure paranormal activity not for a week or a month, but for nearly 4 decades. For 37 straight years, they were tormented in that house. The kids in the family saw it the most. They repeatedly saw this terrifying apparition of a shadowy nun just sort of gliding through the halls. And get this, a nun with no feet. Decades later, the famous investigator Harry Price would come in and document even more stuff, including messages from the spirit that would just appear on mirrors. Okay, so after the Bulls, the next residents, the Smith family, were so tormented. I mean, they felt this entity actively wanted to kill them, that they finally just broke their silence. They went to the press, and that's what turned the Borley Rectory into the most infamous haunted house in all of England. And here's the really crucial part. Even destroying the house couldn't stop the spirit. The evil was never really tied to the building. It was tied to the land itself. This is a curse that follows you. So in 1939, the rectory burns down again, for the second time. And you'd think that would be it, right? Nope. Her spirit didn't vanish. It just moved. It infested the very church where she had been condemned all those centuries ago, and it seemed to grow even more powerful. And this is what brings us full circle, right back to Ed and Lorraine Warren. Their investigation in England might have been over, but the nun, she wasn't finished with them. The entity had actually attached itself to Lorraine and followed her all the way across the Atlantic, back to the United States. Can you imagine? Back in her own home, supposedly her safe space, Lorraine comes face to face with that terrifying spirit one more time. She saw it standing right there in her living room.
This forced her into this final, intense spiritual battle to banish it from her life for good. And, thankfully, after that final confrontation, it never managed to overpower her again. So, what does all this mean for the legend that we know today? You know, the one that terrifies all of us on the big screen. Well, let's take a look at the legend versus the reality. Okay, so the Hollywood version gives us this super powerful demon named Volok, right? But the true story, honestly, it's arguably way more terrifying. Why? Because this isn't some demon from hell. This is the real, documented story of a human soul, a woman's soul, that was so twisted by a brutal death that she became this relentless, vengeful ghost that haunted one single piece of land for centuries. The rectory is long gone. The church is just in ruins. But it just goes to show you, buildings can fall, they can turn to ash, but the echoes of a really profound tragedy, they can linger forever. And that leaves us all with one final question to wonder about. Is she still there? Is the nun of Borley still waiting in the shadows of those ruins for her next visitor?